Have you ever stood in front of a coffee shop menu and felt nervous because everything was written in English? Maybe you already know many English words, but speaking to someone for the first time still feels difficult. Don't worry, many English learners have the same experience. Today's story follows a young woman who visits a cozy cafe and orders coffee in English for the very first time. Along the way, she learns simple expressions, gains confidence, and discovers that real conversations are much easier than she imagined. As you listen, you'll naturally hear useful daily English without feeling like you're studying. So, make yourself comfortable, relax, and enjoy today's story. By the end, you may feel ready to order your own coffee in English with a smile. Today's question: have you ever ordered a drink in English? If not, what would you like to order first? Emily loved learning English, but speaking was always the hardest part. She listened to English podcasts every evening, watched simple videos before bed, and practiced new words while walking to school. Even so, she still felt nervous whenever she imagined talking to someone in English. One sunny Saturday morning, Emily decided it was time to challenge herself. A new coffee shop had opened only a few streets from her apartment. Many visitors from different countries liked spending time there, and she had heard people speaking English almost every day. She looked at herself in the mirror before leaving home and smiled softly. "Today is the day," she whispered. "I'm going to order my coffee in English." She took a deep breath, picked up her small bag, and walked toward the cafe. The weather was warm, and a gentle breeze moved the leaves along the quiet street. Birds were singing, and everything felt peaceful. Emily hoped the peaceful morning would help her stay calm. When she arrived, she stopped outside the cafe for a moment. Through the large glass windows, she could see people talking, reading books, and enjoying their drinks. Soft music filled the room, creating a warm and relaxing atmosphere. The smell of fresh coffee reached the entrance. It was rich, warm, and inviting. Emily smiled because she loved that smell. It reminded her of slow weekends and quiet mornings. She slowly opened the door and walked inside. The cafe was not crowded, which made her feel much better. There were only a few customers sitting near the windows. Some were reading newspapers. Others were working on laptops while quietly drinking coffee. Emily walked toward the menu hanging above the counter. There were many drinks: espresso, latte, cappuccino, americano, mocha, iced latte, cold brew. For a moment, everything looked confusing again. She knew some of the names, but she wasn't sure which drink she wanted. Instead of feeling stressed, she remembered something her English teacher once said: "Simple choices make speaking easier." Emily smiled. "An iced latte sounds perfect today," she thought. While waiting her turn, she quietly practiced the sentence in her head. "I'd like a medium iced latte, please." She repeated it several times. Each time, the sentence felt more natural. Soon, it was her turn. She smiled warmly and greeted the friendly employee. "Good morning. I'd like a medium iced latte, please." The employee smiled back immediately. Of course. Emily felt surprised. That first sentence had been much easier than she expected. The employee asked another question. "What size would you like?" Emily almost laughed quietly. She had already answered that question without realizing it. She smiled again. "Medium, please." The employee nodded. Great choice. Everything was going well. Then another simple question came. "Would you like regular milk or oat milk?" Emily paused for a second. She had heard the word oat before, but she couldn't remember its meaning. Then she remembered something important. "If you don't understand a word, don't panic." She smiled politely. "I'm sorry. Could you explain oat milk?" The employee answered kindly. "It's milk made from oats. Oats are a kind of grain." Emily immediately understood. "Oh, thank you. I'll have regular milk, please." The employee smiled again. "No problem." Emily felt proud. Instead of pretending she understood, she asked politely. That small moment made her much more confident. The next question was easy. "For here or to go?" Emily had practiced this expression before. She answered without thinking too much. "For here, please." Perfect. The employee smiled while preparing the order. Emily stepped away from the counter and looked around the cafe. She realized something interesting. Nobody was watching her. Nobody was judging her English. Everyone was simply enjoying their own morning. That thought made her smile. Sometimes our biggest fear exists only in our imagination. While waiting for her drink, Emily found a comfortable seat near the window. Sunlight gently entered the cafe, making everything look bright and peaceful. She watched people quietly talking with friends, reading books, or looking outside while enjoying their coffee. The atmosphere felt calm. She took out a small notebook from her bag. Instead of writing grammar rules, she wrote a few useful expressions she had just used. "I'd like," "for here," "could you explain?" She smiled again. Learning English through real life felt completely different from studying at home. Everything suddenly had meaning. A few minutes later, her drink was ready. She thanked the employee with a happy smile and carried the iced latte carefully back to her table. It looked beautiful. Tiny drops of water covered the cold glass, and soft white milk mixed gently with dark coffee. Emily picked up the glass and took her first sip. It was smooth, cool, not too sweet. She loved it immediately. As she enjoyed her coffee, she thought about the morning. Only 30 minutes earlier, she had been nervous before even entering the cafe. Now she was sitting comfortably, drinking her favorite coffee, and feeling much more confident about speaking English. She realized that confidence doesn't appear before you try something new. Confidence grows after you take the first step. Emily smiled at that thought. Maybe today wasn't only about ordering coffee. Maybe today was the beginning of something much bigger. Emily slowly enjoyed another sip of her iced latte. The coffee was smooth, fresh, and much better than she expected. She looked around the cafe again and noticed something different. People were smiling, talking quietly, and enjoying their own morning. Nobody seemed to be in a hurry. For the first time, Emily realized that she felt completely relaxed. A few weeks ago, she believed speaking English in public would be embarrassing. Now she understood that most people were kind, patient, and focused on their own lives, instead of judging someone else's English. She smiled and opened her notebook again. Instead of writing many new words, she wrote one simple sentence. "Speaking is easier than worrying." She looked at the sentence for a few seconds and quietly laughed. It was true. She had spent many days imagining problems that never happened. The employee had spoken clearly. The questions were simple. The conversation had been short. Everything felt natural. Emily decided to stay a little longer. She wanted to enjoy both her coffee and the peaceful atmosphere. She looked outside through the large window. People were walking slowly along the street. Some were carrying shopping bags, others were walking their dogs. A family stopped near the cafe to take a picture together. It looked like a perfect Saturday morning. Emily suddenly had another idea. If I can order coffee today, she thought, maybe I can do something a little more difficult next time. She began making a small list in her notebook. Order breakfast, ask for directions, buy a train ticket, order lunch, talk to another traveler. The list made her smile. A few simple conversations could help her improve much more than studying alone for hours. She remembered something she had heard in an English podcast. Learning happens when you use the language. At first, she didn't fully understand that sentence. Now she finally did. English was not only something inside a book, it was something people used every day. While she was thinking, she noticed a beautiful piece of cake inside the display case near the counter. It looked delicious. She wasn't hungry before, but now she felt curious. Should she order something else? She laughed softly. Only 30 minutes ago, ordering one drink felt difficult. Now she was thinking about ordering dessert in English. That felt like real progress. She stood up and walked back to the counter with much more confidence than before. This time she didn't repeat the sentence in her head. She simply smiled. "I'd like a slice of chocolate cake, please." The employee smiled warmly and prepared the dessert. Everything happened naturally. Emily thanked the employee and returned to her table. She noticed something interesting again. The second conversation felt much easier than the first one. She didn't think about grammar. She didn't worry about pronunciation. She simply spoke. As she enjoyed the chocolate cake, she realized another important lesson. Confidence grows through action. Waiting never creates confidence. Practice does. Emily slowly finished her coffee. She looked at the empty glass and felt proud. It wasn't just an empty cup anymore. It reminded her of the first successful conversation she had ever had in English at a real café. She decided to keep the receipt inside her notebook. Some people collect postcards. Others collect photos. Emily wanted to keep this small receipt because it reminded her that every big journey begins with one small step. Before leaving, she looked around the café one last time. Everything looked a little different now. The menu no longer seemed confusing. The counter no longer felt frightening. Even the English words on the menu looked familiar. She quietly read them again. Latte, cappuccino, mocha, cold brew, Americano. Now they felt like friends instead of difficult vocabulary. Emily smiled. She knew she would come back soon. Not because she needed more coffee, because she wanted another chance to use her English. Walking home, she felt lighter than when she had arrived. She realized something very important. Learning English didn't always require a classroom. Sometimes all you needed was a simple conversation, a warm smile, and the courage to say the first sentence. As she reached her apartment building, she opened her notebook one more time and added one final note for the day. Today I ordered my first coffee in English. Then she added another sentence underneath it. And today I discovered that English can become part of my real life. Emily arrived home feeling happier than she had in a long time. She placed her notebook on the table, looked at the small cafe receipt again, and smiled. It seemed like an ordinary piece of paper, but for her it represented something much more important. That evening, she made herself a cup of tea and thought about the day. She realized she could remember almost every English sentence she had used because each one had a real purpose. She had not memorized them from a book. She had spoken them naturally. The next morning, Emily woke up with a new idea. Instead of waiting another week, she decided to visit the cafe again after work. She wanted to practice one more time, while the experience was still fresh in her mind. During the day, she quietly repeated a few useful expressions. I'd like, could I have, for here please, thank you. The sentences felt easier every time she said them. After work, she walked back to the same cafe. This time, she noticed something surprising. She wasn't nervous. She still felt a little excited, but the fear was almost gone. She smiled as she opened the door. The familiar smell of fresh coffee welcomed her once again. Everything felt comfortable. She looked at the menu and immediately understood many of the drink names. Only yesterday they had seemed confusing. Today they looked simple. Emily decided to try something different. Instead of ordering the same drink, she wanted to be a little more adventurous. The word cappuccino caught her attention. She remembered reading that it had soft milk foam on top. She wanted to experience it herself. When it was her turn, she smiled naturally. I'd like a medium cappuccino, please. The sentence came out smoothly. She didn't stop. She didn't hesitate. She simply spoke. After placing her order, she found a seat near the window again. While she waited, she looked around the cafe with different eyes. On her first visit, she had only noticed her own nervousness. Now she noticed the happy conversations, the relaxing music, the warm lights, and the friendly atmosphere. She realized that confidence changes the way we see the world. A few minutes later, her drink was ready. She thanked the employee politely and carried the cup back to her table. The cappuccino looked beautiful. The milk foam was soft and creamy, just as she had imagined. She took a careful sip. The coffee tasted stronger than yesterday's iced latte, but she enjoyed it. Trying something new felt exciting. As she drank her coffee, she opened her notebook again. This time, she didn't write many expressions. Instead, she wrote 3 simple lessons. Speak slowly. Smile. Don't be afraid to ask questions. She looked at the page for a few seconds. Those 3 lessons seemed simple, but they had completely changed her experience. Emily also realized something else. Learning English wasn't only about speaking. Listening carefully was just as important. When she listened patiently, she understood much more than she expected. She no longer felt the need to translate every word into her own language. Instead, she simply listened to the meaning. That made everything easier. As the afternoon became evening, sunlight slowly disappeared behind the buildings outside. The café became quieter. Emily finished the last sip of her cappuccino and closed her notebook. She felt grateful. Not because she had learned many new words, not because she had spoken perfect English. She felt grateful because she had discovered that learning could be enjoyable. It didn't have to feel stressful. It could happen during an ordinary afternoon with a simple cup of coffee. Before leaving, she looked back at the café one last time. She knew she would return again. Each visit would give her another chance to practice, improve, and become more confident. She also knew that one successful conversation would lead to another. Little by little, English was becoming a natural part of her everyday life. She smiled as she walked home. For the first time, she wasn't wondering if she could speak English. She was already thinking about what she wanted to say next. End of main story. Review. Expression. I'd like a medium iced latte, please. Simple English meaning. A polite way to order a drink. One easy example. I'd like a small hot chocolate, please. Expression. Could I have a cappuccino, please? Simple English meaning. A friendly way to ask for something. One easy example. Could I have a glass of water, please? Expression. For here, please. Simple English meaning. You want to enjoy your food or drink in the cafe. One easy example. I'd like my coffee for here, please. Expression. Could you explain that, please? Simple English meaning. A polite way to ask someone to explain something. One easy example. Could you explain this word, please? Expression. Thank you. Have a nice day. Simple English meaning. A polite way to end a conversation. One easy example. Thank you. Have a nice day. Ending. Thank you for listening to today's story. We hope Emily's first coffee order showed you that speaking English doesn't have to be perfect. Small conversations, simple words, and a little courage can help you make real progress every day. Now we'd love to hear from you. Today's question: have you ever ordered a drink in English? If not, what would you like to order first? Write your answer in English in the comments. Keep enjoying English one story at a time, and we'll see you in the next CupTalk English Story. Have a wonderful day.